here we go. Episode 1 of our Cursed City painting series. We're going to be doing some miniatures from this amazing sculpt board game. I love Warhammer miniatures. We're going to be painting Captain Halgrim? Sounds good. From the Cursed City Watch. And if this is your first time at the channel, if you're a board game painting enthusiast like I am, hit that subscribe button. I'm doing a bunch of videos for a bunch of games coming out, including this one and more Warhammer stuff and some other things. So without further ado, let's go. Obviously, the first thing we're going to have to do is build these miniatures. Check the description below, and I have links to everything I use to include the paints and the paint list for what we're using. Obviously, when you're building these, make sure that you are scraping off those mold lines and getting down everything to make them look nice. When you prime them, just makes the overall effect look good. And obviously you spent a ton of money on this game, so you need to make them look as pretty as possible. After you built Captain Halgrim, it should look something like this. And then we are going to use some sticky tack to put onto an old spray can top for priming. We're going to be using Mechanicus Standard Gray spray paint, and it should look like this after you're done priming it. The next step is going to be using some Stirland Mud from Citadel, and we're going to be using this as our dirt around the ruin and the little rocks that he's standing on. Once that's done, we're going to be ready for our base paints. First things we're starting off is going to be using a little Morghast Bone for some quick dry brushing. We're going to be doing a couple colors of quick dry brushing, but obviously get it on your dry brush and get almost all of it off, 90% of it off. And once we're working on our miniature, we're going to be hitting obviously all of the bone areas, part of our cape, and we're going to be hitting the mud that we just put on. Obviously go real light on this. Back and forth strokes, and just building up that layer of dry brushing on all of the bone areas and on certain areas of the ruins. Obviously, when you're doing this, you want to build it up to the brightness that you want, and if you get it on other areas, it's not a big deal. It's just going to add to the flavor because we're going to be using some contrast paints here in a minute. So just neatly dry brush all that stuff around. Don't try and jam it into wherever you're doing. Just nice light strokes, and it'll build up that color pretty easily. So just take your time, put on some music or a good book or whatever you want to listen to, and enjoy the paint. The next dry brush we're going to be using is Adminastratum Grey, and we're going to use this on the ruin that our captain is standing on. And this is going to make it look more old once we put the contrast paint on here in a second. We're going to use Gryph-Charger Grey, which is a contrast paint from Citadel, on all of our ruins. And this is a very thin contrast paint. Obviously do not thin it any more than what it is. And we are going to put it all over that ruin. Let's hit up all of our silver bits, and we're going to be using obviously Leadbelcher, which is the basis of all silver in the Citadel paint series. We're going to be hitting that axe top, his sword that he is holding, and the end of the dagger that is sticking out from the sheath. Also, when you're doing that dagger, it's on his hip, there's a little cut in the sheath, and make sure you just hit that with the Leadbelcher. And lastly, hit that belt buckle that's obviously holding up his dead belt. For all of our skeleton parts, we're going to be using Skeleton Horde Contrast Paint, which is a fantastic, fan-effing-tastic contrast paint for painting skeletons. You probably noticed it in the book when you're building this, the picture shows that his hands are a part of the glaives, I guess you could say, of the armor. I personally liked it to look like he had skeleton fingers holding on to it, so I did it that way instead. You can do it the other way if you follow the art that's on the box or inside the book, but I preferred it this way, so that's what I'm going to do. For our cape, which is primarily on the back of our miniature and some parts in the front that we'll do here in a second, we're going to be using Gryph-Hound Orange, another contrast paint. Fantastic color. Absolutely fantastic. Just be a little careful when you're doing this step, as you do not want to get it on other portions of the miniature that don't require the orange, so just be a little careful when you're hitting that front portion. For the inside of our cape, we're going to be using some Basilicanum Grey, another contrast paint, and again, just be very careful and hit all those areas on the inside of the cape. Don't forget to turn it around and hit the areas that are on the front portion of the cape, where the little orange strings are hanging out on the back side. For the base coat undertone of all of our armor, we're going to be using Caliban Green. Little overview of everything that I painted, so make sure you just composite, look and make sure you got everything, because there's a little couple places that I miss originally. And we're going to cover all of those green armor bits with Black Templar, another contrast paint, and this is going to make the green highlights we're going to do here towards the end of the video really stand out. Now you can kind of see the green underneath in some places you can't. It's a little difficult to see. If you didn't do the green undertone, you might not ever know. But for some places I can see it, so I think it makes it a difference when you're doing it. So you can, obviously if you were to do the green step, we're going to use the Black Templar on top of it, but just for future references, if you're going to do the same thing to the rest of your skeleton horde. For the belt, we're going to use Cygor Brown contrast paint. If you didn't have this, you could use a Rhinox Hide or a Dryad Bark or something comparable from the Citadel paint series. For our handle for our axe spear, we're going to be using a little Wyldwood. For the sheath and our eye patch, we're going to be using a little Volupus Pink. Just be very careful when you're painting that eye patch. You don't want to get it onto our skeleton head, as it'll obviously make it stand out very much. For all of our gold pieces, which includes the chain armor and the top of his armor plating, we're going to use Balthasar Gold. After you painted those areas, we're going to hit the handle and the end of our sword, and the dagger, same thing. For the handle of our dagger and for the strap holding up the eye patch, we're going to use some Rhinox Hide. We're going to use a little Agrax Earthshade to make our weapons a little bit more dirty and old. Obviously, this guy is dead, and he's been dead for some time now. I'm going to say 10,000 years. Let's just go with that. I haven't read any of the context story of Cursed City, but I'm just going to say he's been dead for a long time. So we're going to hit all of our silver bits and our armor of our captain. For the roots that are coming up, we're going to use a little Plaguebearer Flesh, and this is going to give it that old, nasty, very viney looking root we're looking for. And we're going to do some highlights here in the end, and this is going to be the end of our base colors section of the video. So we'll move on to highlights. We're going to start our highlights with some Runefang Steel on our metal bits. So obviously we do not want to do a whole lot on the metal. We want to hit some of those bolts that are coming out, do some edge highlighting. Nothing too crazy. We want to keep that sword and axe looking very old and weathered. We'll continue our edge highlighting with some Bestigor Flesh. And we're going to do this around the entirety of our cloak. We don't want to get any raised areas on top of the back of the cloak, just the edges. So just take your time and do some edge highlighting. Obviously use the edge of your brush to hit all the edges, if I can say edge one more time, around our cloak. Also make sure you do the front, and if you get too much on one spot, just use a finger and smudge it off real quick, as it's probably still wet. Well, this is a good time while you're doing this and need to take a break. Why don't you head over to our Instagram, which is nerd.nights, where you can see what we're doing on a daily basis and see what's upcoming and new videos that we're posting almost daily. For the bones of our captain, we're going to be doling this all down with some Pallied witch flesh. Now, if you're wondering what kind of brush I'm using a Rosemary & Co. brush size 1, and I love this brush. I love these brushes, and I live in the US. I just tried to order some more, and for some reason they banned the hair that they use. I don't know what kind of crap these people think of, but free my hair that I want to use in my brushes. So obviously just go around, hit all the bone areas, and we're gonna hit the hair here in a second. We're going to use this on the tips of our hair, our dead hair that are coming out. And that's just going to kind of match the art of the miniature that is provided in the book. To continue the edge highlighting escapades, we're going to do some Sybarite Green. Now you want to hit the edges of all of the raised areas on the armor, and we're just doing the basic edges of it. So go ahead and take your time and follow with what I'm doing, and don't go too crazy. And again, if you smudge it while you're doing it, get your finger on there real quick and kind of blot it out. For our armor, we're going to be using some Sycorax Bronze. I think that's how you say it. And we're going to be doing this on the entirety of the miniature. When you're going around the rivets on the top portion of our armor, keep those recesses and around the rivets very old and dirty. We want to keep that the way it is. We are also going to use this color to hit all of the bolts that are sticking out from the armor, as again, we're trying to match that card art as much as we can. We're going to take some pink horror and do some more edge highlighting and around the holes in our sheath and our eye patch. So again, just take your time. Still using a size 1 brush to do all of this. For the strap on the eye patch, we're going to hit that just the very top portion. Again, I'm using an edge highlight on our strap for the eye patch with some Flayed ones. Flesh. Death. I love it. Just to kind of do some more edge highlighting, because we just haven't had enough during this entire video, we're going to use some Baneblade Brown on our belt. We're also going to use this same thing on our handle of the dagger that is on his waist. For the roots that we had talked about earlier, we're going to use some Nurgling Green to brighten them up just a little bit. And I think that these roots with the Plaguebearer's Flesh and the Nurgling Green highlight on them is just really makes this miniature stand out. It gives you that nice dead look. And obviously that's the look we are going for, because he's dead. To really weather up these old pieces of silver weaponry, we're going to use some Nihlakh Oxide. And again, use this sparingly. Put it in some of the holes, a little bit on the edge, just kind of smudge it around. And the final step, we need to redo the base, the outside of the base. I'm using Mechanicus Standard Gray, and all we want to do is just redo the whole thing. I know you can see me just kind of barely hitting it, but redo the whole darn thing all the way around. And it'll look really nice. And there you have it. There is the captain, Halgrim, from Cursed City. It wasn't a lot of steps, and I'm sure yours looks just as amazing, and you did a great job. Nothing crazy. I think it looks good. I just want to say thank you for watching this video. If you are not a subscriber and you're still watching, please consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. And obviously the more subscribers and the more people that watch it, people that leave comments, leave a comment below. It really motivates me to make more videos and keep this going, as it's very time consuming. So without further ado, I appreciate it, and paint on.